So we are in the throes of classic algebra here. You may have used this before, actually. You ever heard of this thing?
Yes.
Now, before I get into what the quadratic formula is, I want to talk about why we need the quadratic formula, okay? Because if you don't know why you need it, then there's no reason to do it, right? So, I have an equation here, yes? How do I know it's an equation? Because it has an equal sign. If it doesn't have an equal sign, it's called an expression, okay? So we have an equation. Now, we have learned a few different ways to solve this equation. And by solve, I mean find out what n could equal to make this true. How many answers do you think I'm going to get? How many have we been getting on our problems lately? 2. We're going to get 2 answers. Can I tell you why? Do you see what the exponent is here? What is it? That tells us how many answers we're going to get. That's actually a really important thing. That's called the fundamental theorem of algebra. That the highest exponent in the equation tells you how many answers there are. Crazy. So if I had an x to the third, I would expect 3 answers. Okay? So we're sticking with quadratics, which always have an exponent of 2. So we're looking for 2 answers. Now, the first way we found to solve these was to factor them. Remember all that good snowflaking? Yeah? Well, not all equations can be factored. We learned that because we had to do what we did last week. What did we do last week? The thing. Great. We spent 5 days on it and took a quiz on it, and all you can tell me is it's the thing? What is it called? Completing the square. Okay? So if you can't factor, you can use this method called completing the square. If you can't use completing the square, then you can use this method called the quadratic formula. All right? Now, what is the quadratic formula? To get my 2x answers, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that whole thing is under the square root. Now, hang on. I'm going to be specific here because some people like to start writing quickly and then they forget things. The whole b squared minus 4ac, that whole thing is under the radical. Okay? And then the whole kit and caboodle there is over 2a. Okay? Now, that is something that you are going to have to memorize.
Ooh, girl. Wow, thank you. You don't need math.
It's not that hard.
What was I going to say? Oh, you know what's interesting? There is, have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Okay, at the very end of the movie, who is it that gets a brain? The Scarecrow gets a brain. When he gets a brain, he starts quoting math facts. And he gets a math fact wrong. He says the quadratic formula is the sum of the squares of the 2 legs of a right triangle is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. He says it's the quadratic formula, but it's actually the Pythagorean theorem. So I would ask for a refund on that brain because he's already backwards. But it's kind of funny that it's in there. And most people will remember the quadratic formula because you have to memorize it. Now, do you want a song to go with it? Do you want a song? Do you know the song?
No.
If you know the song, join in. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay? What?
Do it one more time.
I'm already recorded. I don't need to do it again. I'll do it when I get to a problem, okay?
You go home and put it on a loop.
Yeah, there you go. Now, yeah, put it on a loop. So, what are all of these A, B's, and C's?
Numbers.
They are letters and they are numbers. Where do they come from?
The equation.
Guys, this is where we're getting into the nitty-gritty. You're going to need to know this. How do I find an A, a B, or a C? Because all I see is an N and some numbers. I do what? Some of you want to add 120, but that's what we did when we were doing completing the square. We don't need to do that here for quadratic formula. I'm actually glad you said that, though, because one of the first requirements for the quadratic formula is that your equation is in standard form. What is standard form? AX squared plus BX plus C equals 0. There's an A, B, and a C.
Interesting.
Do you think those could be the A's, B's, and C's that go into my formula?
Yes.
They could be. So in this case, what I want you to get in the habit of writing down is I want you to identify what is A, what is B, and what is C before you actually get into the formula. That way you can hopefully keep your numbers straight a little bit. So in this equation, first off, is it in standard form?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because I have AX squared plus BX plus C. What is A?
4.
What is B?
4.
And what is C?
Negative 1. Wouldn't it be 1?
A is simply, or the A, B, and C are simply the coefficients, which means they're the number in front of the letter, not the letter itself. Okay? All right. Are you ready to see how it plugs in?
Yeah.
Now, this is the hardest part, and I'm going to try and give you an easy way to go through it. You ready? All right. So, I have negative B. Negative B. As you plug stuff in, get in the habit of always plugging things in parentheses. That will help you keep your negative sign straight. So, negative B, and I'm going to put there a 4, because that's what B is, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC. Do you see how I just am putting a bunch of parentheses to fill in? It's going to help me keep things straight. So this is B for A and C all over 2A. Gesundheit. Okay, I know this is really ugly right here, but do you understand how I got it?
Yeah.
Because it's only going to get prettier. So if you can deal with the ugly, we can get to the pretty. You okay? All right. So, negative 4. Well, I don't have to worry about anything there. It's just going to be negative 4, isn't it?
Yeah.
Plus or minus, I'm going to have a square root of something crazy. And at the bottom, I have 2 times 4, which is 8. So let's take care of those easy parts first. Now, I like going straight to my calculator for here. Okay? And when I go to my calculator, I'm still going to plug things in parentheses. So, I'm going to plug in parentheses 4, close my parentheses, squared, minus 4 times negative 120. Do you see how I was putting in parentheses for all of those just the same way I have it here?
Yeah.
When I press equal or enter,
I like that number.
you like that number? It was towards the end of the Great Depression. It was. The 1930s was the Great Depression.
I know.
It was probably Dust Bowl time. When all the Okies and Arkies started migrating west. See, I know things more than just math sometimes.
Wow.
Okay, is everyone okay with what I've got so far?
Yes.
Okay. Did I hear a no? Is that because you're still plugging it into your calculator? One more tricky part and then just some simplifying.
Oh my God.
Did I do that wrong?
No.
Okay, so it's a large number. We'll deal with it. I'm going to start throwing things at that group over there under the screen.
Did someone spray something?
Okay, now's where things get a little weird. You ready? I don't like this. I don't like that that's a large number, so I'm going to draw a tree for that in a few minutes. I'm not going to do that right yet. But I also don't like when I have 2 things over 1 denominator. Okay? The reason is because people like to reduce 4 and 8, which is fine. But if you reduce this 8, you forget the fact that this is also over 8, and it doesn't get reduced in the same way. So, What we're going to do is we're going to split this up. This is representing two fractions. I have negative 4 over 8, and then I have plus and minus radical 1936 over 8.
Wait, hold up. You did negative 4 times 8.
I took the first term over the denominator. That's my first fraction. 2 times 4. And then my fraction, or my radical over the denominator also, and I just put the plus or minus there. Yep.
Basically, you keep everything and you just bring down the 8.
No, it's not. No.
Yes.
Why'd you get the 8 there?
Miss Franklin.
Why did I keep the 8 there?
Yeah.
Good question. Let me see if I can explain that well. If I have something like that, what's my answer?
6 over 4.
Or 5 over 4? That might be a little better.
Oh, yeah.
Can that also be written as this? Is that still 5/4?
Yeah.
So it's an equivalent way of writing something. The thing is that when people get something like this, if this was a 6, they might go, oh, I can reduce that to 3 over 2 and call it 3 plus 2 over 2 and get 5/2, which is not the same thing. So it's easier to simplify things when we split it into two fractions than if we try and keep it as one. Okay? So that's why I'm splitting it up, because I can reduce negative 4 over 8, can't I? What does it reduce to? Negative 1 over 2. Now let's talk about that guy. 1936. That is a huge number. Let's draw a tree. I know it's even, so what does that tell me? I can divide it by 2, right? 1936 divided by 2 is 968. I can still divide by 2. And I get 484. That was the first 3 digits of my phone number growing up. Huh. 4840183. That was my phone number when I was growing up. I do, because back in those days we didn't have cell phones to call things. You had to memorize your phone number.
I still know my parents and my grandma's.
Let's see, 484 divided by 2. Is anybody following me?
Yes.
Or am I just doing a math problem by myself? Why do I keep dividing by 2?
I'm way behind where you're at right now. I'm like at Mount Everest.
Why do I keep dividing by 2?
Because you're trying to.
Because it's even, and I don't know what else goes into those numbers, so I'm just trying to keep it easy. But 121, finally I get to something that I can do. So, what comes out of the parentheses? Or of the radical, I should say.
11.
A 2, another 2, and an 11. Wait a minute, what just happened there? Everything just came out. So what does that mean?
So you multiply.
Well, shoot, I could have done that and gotten 44.
You should have done that in the first place.
I should have.
Told you the whole time.
I should have listened to you. I should have listened to you. Yes?
We need tutoring.
It's okay. You have 5 other problems to.
Yep. So let's see what I've got here. If I reduce 44 over 8, not 4 over 8, 44 over 8, what do I get? 11 halves.
Yeah.
Almost. Because what do you notice about both of the fractions here?
Oh, it is 11 half.
What do you notice about both the fractions here? They both have a 2. So look at this. Negative 1/2 plus 11 halves is 5.
I thought I was supposed to have 2.
You did all that to get your answer.
There's only one answer.
So 5 is the answer?
There's another answer because it's negative 1/2 minus
Oh, because we do the plus.
11/2, and I get negative 6. There's my 2 answers. Now, they're not always going to turn out to be nice numbers.
It could be worse.
It could be a lot worse. Trust me, I could make it a lot more miserable for you.
Can you please not?
Yes, question. How did I get the negative 6? I did, remember the plus or minus means you really have 2 problems going on. You have negative 1/2 plus 11/2 and negative 1/2 minus 11/2. Let me break that down for you. Negative 1/2 plus 11/2 and you have negative 1/2 minus 11/2. That's what that means. What is negative 1/2 plus 11/2? Isn't that 10/2? Which is 5. Negative 1/2 minus 11/2 is negative 12/2, which is negative 6. I just chose to let my calculator do that difficult fraction work for me. Because it's funny, some of you guys won't be afraid of this, but as soon as you get a simple little fraction, you'll run away and skip the problem. So let's just let the calculator do that part for us. Okay? Now, we are going to be spending a few days on this because it's important that you know how to do this. So you can whine now and drag your feet and fail your test, or you can suck it up and know that you have to learn it and push through. Okay? Okay? All right. Okay. Next one. Did I box my answer? Yes. I'm going to use a different color pen just so that it doesn't get confused. Okay. What did you just say?
There's no B in there.
That's an excellent observation. There's no B in there. But before I get to that, is it in standard form? Yes. So let's identify A, B, and C. And since you said there's no B there, what does that mean B is?
0.
It means it's 0. Is this too small? I can scoot it in, guys. Just tell me. What is A? 6. What is C? All right. Now that I have that, I've got to plug it in here. Negative B plus or minus. Again, what's the trick with plugging stuff in? Always plug it in parentheses. 0 squared minus 4 times A times C. Now, Gesundheit. This one looks like it might be a little simpler because that 0 is going to make life a little easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. What is negative 0? Isn't it just 0?
Yeah.
So I don't even need to write that part because it's just going to drop out. Right? 0 plus something or 0 minus something, you don't need that 0 there. Right? Now here, I can either drop out the 0 or I could just leave it in here and do 0 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 96. Woo, big number. So I have plus or minus radical 2304 over what? 2 times 6 is 12. So now I just need to simplify that. Since I'm learning from my mistakes, and last time I realized after drawing that humongous tree that it was a nice square root, I'm going to start off checking to see, is it a nice one? It is. Plus or minus 48 over 12. What is 48 over 12? 4?
Wow.
So my answer is just plus or minus 4. So sometimes you will get ones that are super quick to get to the answer. Sometimes you'll get ones that are a little trickier. Yes? Isn't there another answer? What do you mean? There's 2 answers? That is This is two answers. This is the answer of positive 4 and negative 4. Plus and minus means it's taking both the positive 4 and the negative 4. So it is still two answers. Okay? So let's try this one. Is this one in standard form?
Yeah.
By the way, in standard form, it has to equal 0.
No, so you have to subtract 5.
So I need it to equal 0. I am going to subtract 5. You have to get it into standard form before you identify. Guys, you have to get it into standard form before you identify A, B, and C. If you try and identify A, B, and C before you get it into standard form, your A, B, and C are wrong, and if your A, B, and C are wrong, your whole problem is wrong. Right? So do that first. What's negative 110 minus 5? Negative 115? All right. What is A?
4.
What is B?
3.
What is C?
Negative 115.
Man, these C values are big, aren't they? Oop, you can't see that. All right. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 AC
Now I can't concentrate with that song.
all over 2A. That made me write kind of fast and sing kind of slow at the same time. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do the easy parts first.
Yes.
Negative times 3 is negative 3. Yes? Plus or minus the square root thing. I will put that in my calculator in a minute. 2 times 4 is 8. So I have 8 on the bottom.
I need to figure out how to do this.
Let's do the calculator part. You ready?
Yeah.
Parentheses, 3 squared. By the way, do you notice when I'm doing the calculator part, I'm not putting the radical into the calculator at
Yeah, I
all.
know.
Okay? Make sure you're not doing that yet either. Minus 4, parentheses 4, parentheses negative 115. Another big number.
1849.
Hey, wasn't that the gold rush?
I don't know.
It's where the 49ers came from. Come on.
Oh, I don't know.
The San Francisco 49ers are named after the 1849 gold rush where people came to the... You didn't know that?
Interesting. No, I don't.
I don't follow football, but I know why they're called the 49ers. See, look, you don't just learn math when you're in here. You get a full-rounded education. Okay.
We are well-rounded students in here.
Square root of 1849 is 43. Yay! Negative 3 plus or minus 43 all over 8. Okay, how do I get my two answers from here?
Do it's negative 3 over 8.
It's negative. I don't have to because I have all nice numbers. Watch. Negative 3 plus 43 over 8.
Oh.
And negative 3 minus 43 over 8. I could split it if I wanted to. Or I could split it here. So let's see. Negative 3 plus 43 is what? 40. Divided by 8 is 5. So one of my answers is 5. Negative 3 minus 43 is negative 46. Divided by 8. That doesn't come out to a nice number.
Great.
But do you notice that there's no decimals in the problem anywhere? So I can't leave my answer as a decimal. I have to default to a fraction. So how can I change this to a fraction? Second fraction button, enter. There's my
I like that number. That's a great number.
second fraction button. Oh, I'm pressing the wrong one. Sorry. Second, it's the other button, the F arrow D.
Wait, I need to find a...
It's just right above the fraction button. F arrow D takes you from a fraction to a decimal or from a decimal to a fraction. Oops, wrong button. Ah! You threw me off here. Minus 43 divided by 8, second fraction to decimal. That's what I was looking for. Now I press the second fraction button. Negative 23 over 4. So again, I use this part to change it from the decimal to the fraction, and then this one to change it from the mixed number to the improper fraction. Yes. You don't have that button? It should be the PRB. If you should. Oh, it's the SD. Do you have this Casio? It's the SD button if you have the Casio. Right here. Okay. All right, let's look at the next one. What do I need to do first? Is this in... All right, so is this one in standard form? No. What do I need to do to get it in standard form? I need to move the 10 over. So I'm going to subtract 10, and that gives me 5k squared plus 4k what? Minus 96 equals 0. So we're in the correct form because we've got the equals 0. What do I do now? Identify A, B, and C. What is A?
5.
What is B?
4.
And what is C?
-96.
Okay. So, X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 or A C all over 2A. Bet you didn't know I was in choir when I was in high school.
I would never prove it. Speaking of, where's your plaque?
Don't ask me to prove it because I could very well.
We can do a rendition of
I'm actually on the cover of a CD from college. Yep. Okay. We sang things a little bit different than the Quadratic Formula song. All right. So I have -4. I have 10 on the bottom this time, right? And I made a gigantic square root sign there, and it's probably not going to be that gigantic. So let's see. What do I put into my calculator? Parentheses. 4 squared. Minus 4 parentheses. 5 parentheses. Negative 96. By the way, any of you still struggling with the calculator? It does notice a difference between a negative sign and a subtract sign. You cannot use the subtraction sign as a negative sign. Okay? So if you keep getting error, it's probably because you're trying to call this your negative sign there. Okay? All right, what did I get? 1936.
I got 1924.
Oh, crud. Oh, dear.
I probably did it wrong.
4 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 96. Can anyone else concur with my answer?
I can.
You can. Awesome. Did we do 1936? We did. Do you remember this?
Oh,
So that's -4 plus or minus what?
wait, that's weird.
It is weird, isn't it?
No, because there you had A equals 4 and B equals 4, but A equals 5 on this one.
I know. Different cases. Interesting.
Oh, because that's the one. Okay, no.
Crazy. All right. So what do I have? I have -4 plus 44 over 10 and -4 minus 44 over 10. So -4 plus 44 plus 11. Talking and doing math at the same time is hard. Is 40. Divided by 10 is,
4.
there's one answer. And -4 minus 44 divided by 10 is going to be a decimal. Change it to a fraction and to a mixed number if you need to. -24 over 5. What's nice about using your calculator for the fractions is you don't ever have to worry about reducing. The calculator will always give you the most reduced form. Okay? All right, how many answers did I promise that you would get for every problem? Have I gotten 2 for every problem?
Yeah.
All right. All right, I do have time. I want to keep going because these are important.
Okay.
Is number 5 in standard form?
Yes.
All right, what is A?
12.
What is B?
0.
What is C?
Negative 11.
All right. I like when B is 0 because negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. What happens to the 0? It disappears. It cancels out, right? So I have plus or minus the square root of something over 24. So let's see. Negative 4. Let me take that back. 0 squared minus 4 times 12 times negative 11. 528. Is that a nice square root? No. So what do I need to do? Tree. 528 is even, so I know it can divide by 2. 264, still even. 264. So I can divide by 2 again. 132. Getting smaller, still even. 66. 6 and 11. 3 and 2. Okay, what comes out?
2.
A 2 and another 2. And what's left at home?
3 and 11.
3 and 11. So what does that end up being? 4 radical 33? Yeah?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me I was off the screen. So let's see. I have plus or minus 4 radical 33 over 24.
Yeah.
Now, the rule with reducing stuff is you can reduce anything outside the radical on top with anything outside a radical on the bottom. You cannot reduce anything inside a radical with something outside a radical. So 4 over 24, if I were to plug that into my fraction here, 4 over 24 reduces to 1/6. That becomes a 1. That becomes a 6. So what do I have? Plus or minus 1 radical 33, which we would just write like that, over 6.
Wait. What?
Where did I lose you?
After before you equaled anything. So right there, yeah.
Okay, you saw how I drew the tree,
Yeah.
okay, and how the tree gave me 4 radical 33.
Yeah.
So I had 4 radical 33 over 24.
Yeah.
4 over 24, since both of those are not in a radical, they can be reduced. So I went to my calculator and I put 4 over 24,
Yeah, that's 1/6.
and it reduces to 1/6. So this becomes plus or minus 1 radical 33 over 6.
You just didn't write extra. That's what you write.
Sorry. Yes?
From that, where did you get the negative?
Oops, sorry. Where did I get the what?
The negative 4. That's plus or minus.
The negative 4? You mean this? Right here?
Yeah.
It's part of the formula. Right up there. Okay? All right, let's try this last one. Is this in standard form? Nope. I got to move 6v. That's going to give me 11v squared minus 6v equals 18. Now what do I need to do? Move the 18. 11v squared minus 6v minus 18 equals 0. What is A? 11. What is B? What is C? Nope.
Oh shoot! I just looked at the 0.
All right. You try and plug it into the quadratic formula. I may need to help you with some simplifying towards the end, but you try plugging it in. By the way, look at what happens to that negative b.
It becomes a positive.
B squared minus 4 times A. Am I the only one trying this? Okay. All over 2A. So let's see. Negative 6 becomes positive 6. Plus or minus the square root of something over 22. Negative 6 squared minus 4 times 11 times negative 18. You should have at least been able to get to here. Did you at least get to here? So let's see. Square root of 828. Not a nice number. So, now listen up, because this one is not a nice number, but the first term didn't drop out like that at last one. So I do need to split this up. So I'm going to split it up into 6 over 22 plus or minus radical 828 over 22. Now this one shouldn't be too bad. 6 over 22, what does that reduce to? Let's go to a calculator. 6 over 22, 3 over 11. Now, let's look at this radical 828 over 22. Radical 828. I can divide that by 2 and it gives me 414. Divide that by 2 and I get 207. Can't divide that by 2, can I? Can I divide it by 3? Yep, 3 and 69. That's also divisible by 3. And then I think I'm stuck. Yeah? What comes out? A 2 and a 3. And left inside is, so what does it simplify to? 6 radical 23. Now let's think about this for a minute. It's over 22, isn't it? Yeah. So I have 6 radical 23 over 22. What part of that can I reduce? The 6 and the 22. So I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to do 6 over 22. It reduces to 3 over 11. So what do I have? 3 radical 23 over 11, and that's as nice as I can make that one. Okay? All right, I know this stuff gets kind of confusing. We're going to practice it for a few days because we got to get it down. Please note that both the quadratic formula and completing the square will be on your test. Okay? The test, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I would guess like Tuesday of next weekish. No, like Wednesday of next week because we don't have school Monday. Okay? All right. Happy studying.